Kit Alowitz, Training and Development Manager, and I'm here with Dr. Matthew Chodkowski from the Institute of Post-Industrial Leadership. In this Leadership Journey video segment, we're going to be talking about a very simple yet very powerful organizational learning model, and we call it the 3 I's. Now, the 3 I's are internalize, integrate, and institutionalize, as you can see here. And it's a well-known learning process that has been studied and well documented for many, many years. This learning model is very critical because without truly understanding how organizational learning happens, companies, they really risk losing the competitive advantage they stand to gain from what they have taken the time to try to learn.
That's right, Kit. The 3I framework explores and explains the organizational learning phenomenon, how organizations identify, generate, and embed knowledge, which is essentially organizational culture, what we commonly refer to as a learning organization. And this is why we say the limits of our learning are the limits of our organizations.
That's a great point, Matt. And we should point out that this learning process, it's discussed in workshop 1 of Matt's lead principle.
Yes, usually within the first hour of workshop 1, we introduce the concept.
I remember. Now, I remember also walking through the 3 I's using a flip chart to list the 3 stages, beginning with internalize and briefly talking about each stage. But looking back now, you spent very little time on institutionalization. Why is that?
Well, that's a keen observation, actually, and a key point, Kid. The 3 I's represent a process that follows a natural and inevitable progression. There's an interdependent relationship, beginning with internalizing, which is a personal level process, and integration, which is the application of the internalized knowledge at the group level, and finally with institutionalization, which is in essence the creation of organizational culture, and it is the most complex of the 3 I's. In fact, to date, studies have not fully elaborated or explicated the institutionalization process. So since LEAD is primarily focused on internalizing principles at the motive level and integrating them at the group level, we basically sidestep the concept of institutionalization in the LEAD program until we get to the coaching process.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for that explanation. And that's good because our objective here today is to quickly review the 3 I's, but more importantly, we want to dig a little bit deeper into the 3-step process and also explain why institutionalization is not only the longest term in the LEAD program, but it is also the hardest step to implement. Now, we can begin with an overview, but then we want to take it to the next level for you as our viewers today, because I think we can assume they or you have a pretty good idea of the general concepts.
Sure. Let's start with a basic drawing of the 3I process. It illustrates the direction of the process. Internalize, integrate, and then institutionalize. But we also need to understand the dependency of the elements. Integration depends upon internalization, and institutionalization depends upon integration. This emphasizes the importance and the primacy of internalization. There happens to be one other critical relationship, the interdependency of the elements. All 3 of the elements have a cause and effect relationship. So you can see that it's complex, and the complexity is primarily due to the function of institutionalization.
Well, that's a lot to take in. There's a lot of meaty stuff in what you're talking about. Now, we have discussed this before, but would you be willing to quickly explain how is it that institutionalization adds so much to the complexity?
Okay, so let me start by pointing out that no individual is restricted in any way from internalizing an idea, a concept, or a principle. Furthermore, integration does not require that a formal organization structure be in place. However, institutionalization implies that a formal organizational structure exists. In fact, it's because of the formal structure that we have in organizations that we need institutionalization in the first place.
Aha, that makes sense. And that I'm assuming that's because an organizational structure by its very nature creates silos and hierarchy. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, exactly. Internalizing and integrating alone cannot produce organizational culture.
That makes sense also, Matt. Institutionalization, it acts to reinforce individual internalization and functional integration. But I also think it results in policies and programs, and it also generates organizational-wide integrating mechanisms.
What Well said, Kit.
So, very good. So let's get back to the first two steps, internalization and integration. What can we add to build on these steps so we can help our viewers kind of deepen their knowledge and understanding of what we're talking about?
I think we can offer some clarifying concepts and some supporting statements. Internalization is not limited to the lead principles or the leadership journey. It is, in fact, the human learning process, which we have been doing our entire lives. Learning is a basic human need and is subject to natural laws and forces, not the least of which is curiosity, followed by, of course, humility and courage.
That makes sense. Well, I have spoken to a number of people who have said that the process of internalizing is difficult because it deals with reflection, with journaling, maybe holding two conflicting ideas in your head at the same time, introspection, creating corollaries, and not holding on, not finding the time to want to dedicate to make this process happen. What advice would you give us in this particular conundrum?
Well, first you have to review the process. It's in the workshop workbook, and then practice it. It's just like exercise of any kind. Realize that we have more time to reflect than we need because we're just thinking. Learn to think when you are doing other things. And the only other thing you can do is think.
And I love that.
And remember that you've been doing this since you were a child. It is a simple process, so we like to say surrender to the simplicity.
Ooh, I like that. Surrender to the simplicity. That's nice.
Kit, you know, I've also spoken to people who have experienced some difficulties with integration. They worry about creating correct corollaries, and they question if they are applying principles correctly.
Well, that's interesting. There is no incorrect corollaries, as I understand it. A corollary is simply a way of thinking about some concept. It is a person's perception about something. Some corollaries may be more accurate than others, but as one's perceptions become more comprehensive, those corollaries that are less accurate simply seem to fade away. And I guess in the final analysis, all corollaries are useful. Now, regarding applying principles correctly, the important point here is to remember that integration is not defined as the application of principles. It's defined as the application of internalized principles. So, once internalized to a certain point, a person will simply apply a principle with confidence and competence, because applying a principle is not the point. Personifying a principle is the point.
Exactly right. Very, very good observation. Learning at the organizational level can only occur when the learning and knowledge at the individual and group levels have been collectively recognized, accepted, and used as organizational knowledge. While the process of creating a learning organization of collectively accepted knowledge can take time and might even occur subconsciously to some degree, it is of significant strategic importance. Collective acceptance of shared principles is the link between individual, group, and organizational learning. This is the key to creating a learning organization.
Ooh, I love that, a learning organization. Well, I got to think, in my mind, the 3 I's, the learning model changes how we really think about leaders and the culture. It demonstrates that everybody, not only the leaders, play a vital role in developing a learning organization and truly transforming organizational culture. So, as Matt and I conclude this video segment, we want to both invite you to consider that you play a pivotal role in that evolution, that transformation, that revolution occurring. Consider stepping up to the plate and think, learn, absorb, internalize, integrate, and help our organization institutionalize principles on our way to becoming a premier learning organization, which unequivocally also means that we're getting closer and closer to preeminence.